Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fan Appreciation Month here on Reaction and Review. Tonight, guys, I'm taking a look at a horror film from 2003. That movie is Monsturd. Now, I know two things about this movie. I do know the basic premise, which is it's a movie about a serial killer who, under some bizarre circumstance, gets turned into a sentient killer pile of crap. No, I'm not kidding. That is the actual plot to this thing. And number two, I know that this is distributed by Brain Damage Films, which is the same cinematic septic tank that shat forth Terror Tunes. And we all know how much I absolutely despised Terror Tunes. So I don't know if this thing is going to be any good. I am going to tell you that the premise almost sounds interesting enough to make for a good movie. But now we have to see if they can actually take that slightly promising premise and make something good out of it. And the only way I'm going to find out if this thing is any good is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Monsturd. Oh my god. Guys, I totally expected the acting in this thing to suck. I was not expecting it to suck this much. This is just painful. I just kind of wanted to share that, guys. Wow. And we finally get our first look at the monster, and God, that suit looks horrible. It doesn't even fucking look, like shit. How the hell do you screw up making a suit that's supposed to look like a pile of shit? I don't know how, but they somehow screwed that up. That's kind of sad. Alright guys, I really don't think I'm asking much here, but what I want right now from this movie is I want something. I want one scene, one actor, one story point, one special effect which doesn't make me absolutely cringe. I want the filmmakers to prove to me that they actually know how to do something competently, and I fear I'm not going to get that. You know, guys, I understand this movie is trying to be funny, but guess what? It's failing. Every single time they have tried to make this thing funny, it has failed miserably to the point where it's no longer trying, where frankly funny's the last thing it is. And honestly, it's far more tragic, sad, and depressing than funny. But hopefully I'll remember to talk about that when this horrible thing is done. So, all of a sudden now the monster can talk. We've had absolutely zero, hint that this thing can talk. And now, all of a sudden, it's become incredibly talkative. This, I guess to me, it just feels a little off, you know what I mean? Okay, so apparently you can store flies in the same kind of pet carrier you'd use to carry like a cat or a small dog. There's no way that those flies are going to fly out of the gigantic metal grate up front with holes big enough for flies to perfectly fit through. Apparently either flies are too stupid to fly out of that, or you can train them to not, fly out. I would never have guessed. You really do learn something new every fucking day, guys. Wow. That ending fucking sucked. Anyway, guys, that was Monsturd, and wow. Okay. I'm gonna get the obvious joke over and done with right now. This movie is a piece of shit. Now, I'm going to try to avoid that for the rest of this review. It's probably going to be kind of difficult because you could pretty much say that everything in this movie is shitty, but I'm going to try to explain why. Okay, let's start with the writing. First of all, you can totally tell that the writers, who also were the directors in this thing, I should mention, totally knew that what they had here was a horrible movie. I'm not even talking horrible in a funny way. They knew that what they had here was grade A garbage. So they worked in a framing friggin' like device where it's a child telling a bedtime story to her father. And apparently that is supposed to justify why the story is so inherently stupid. Because it's being told by essentially a 10-year-old to her father. Pardon me. So, if that was their attempt at trying to justify how absolutely horrible the story is, and how poorly written the whole thing is, it doesn't work. Okay, it still doesn't explain why you decided to go all the way past scripting to filming the stupid thing, and then getting a company to put it out on DVD. That, my friends, absolutely shuts down any argument you have about how they might have tried to justify the story being that bad. But let's just delve into the story a little bit here. First of all, as I stated, the whole concept of a serial killer being turned into a killer turd, monster, sounds kind of cool. I mean, especially since we've had so many other films like it. We've had films where killers have been turned into dolls, they've been turned into snowmen, they've been turned into gingerbread men. So really, guys, a giant killer turd is not exactly way out there. It's just that, well, it's not as interesting as the idea of a gingerbread man or a killer doll or a killer snowman. I still have to watch the movie about the killer snowman. I might just do that for Christmas this year. Excuse me. Anyway, but this premise, as interesting as it may sound, completely falls flat because our story really goes nowhere. And I'd like to talk about our character depth. We have one character who actually gets some form of development over the course of the film, and that is the sheriff. The sheriff starts off the film, and everybody kind of seems to want to take him seriously and all this other stuff. And then about halfway through, he mentions that his wife died of cancer years and years ago, and that he's been drinking ever since. And then all of a sudden, just like that, we find out that no one has been taking him seriously, and that he's been drinking himself into absolute oblivion since his wife died. None of that was hinted at much beforehand, except for one shot when he was at a bar and he had been knocking back a ton of drinks, which could really have just tied into the fact that he watched a serial killer melt in this vat of sewage acid in the sewers. But no, all of a sudden then nobody is taking him seriously because he has been drinking tons ever since his wife died. And that's literally all we have in terms of development. Is this sudden change in this character from being taken somewhat seriously to being essentially the town joke. And there is no hint of it beforehand. And there certainly seems to be no justification afterwards, except the fact that he was dumb enough to, on camera, at least for the viewer, admit that his wife died of cancer. And it seemed absolutely out of left field, and it seemed totally unnecessary. Anyway. And that really is the only bit of depth we have for any of these characters. Everybody else is incredibly shallow. We have two deputies who are played by the film's writers and directors. I want to make that clear. And these two are supposed to be our comic relief characters. However, they are about as funny as being diagnosed with cancer. They are in no way funny, and their dialogue sucks. Their acting is terrible. There is no positive about those two characters, and really, the entire film would have benefited it better. It probably would have benefited more if they weren't there. Actually, this film would probably have benefited if we had competent writers and competent directors, too. But then again, I honestly am wishing for far, far more than this thing was ever going to give me. So, yes, guys, we have acting here which is just flat, straight up. And that's because nobody has any real motivation. There really is no character depth outside of the sheriff is all of a sudden a drunk. There's somebody who works at the diner who apparently is the town bicycle. Again, that is mentioned in like one scene and then never brought up again. There is no personality on any of these characters outside of the sheriff, and his personality kind of came late into the film. So yes, guys, when we have dialogue which is that bad, the acting is going to suffer because you can't ask people who, as far as I know, have no prior acting experience to try to take a script which is this terrible and try to work miracles with it. It just isn't going to happen. A few other things involving the story that I just do not understand is we never really find out exactly what the shit man's weakness is. And by the way, yes, the character's name is in fact the shit man, because the fucking shit man comes right out and says that his big weakness are flies, because flies will eat him. Okay, that's totally cool. And in the end, yes, it is flies who wind up eating him. Flies who apparently are so well trained that they can stay inside of a pet carrier and not go flying out of the many holes built into a pet carrier to allow a cat or a dog to breathe. But again, I'm not going to dwell on that much. However, though, our team of officers and FBI agents also hit him with like a ton of other things because they think that if he's out in the sun, it will, dry him. We don't know if that's true. All of them decide to wear diapers as body armor. We don't know if that really served any functional purpose or not because it's never tested. We have them spraying down the monster with Pepto because apparently Pepto is supposed to soften stool and all this other crap. And we don't know if that's doing anything. Pardon me. When all is said and done, guys, we don't know what combination of this killed it outside of the fact that the flies ate it to a point where its arms fell off and it died. Spoiler, in case you really wanted to know, in case you didn't want the ending of this thing spoiled on you. It's like the writers could have maybe had it where they tried to dry him out and it didn't work, or they tried spraying him with Pepto and it didn't work, or they tried using diapers as body armor and it doesn't work. They could have really fleshed out that, and we might have had a slightly better story. But of course, we would first have to have writers who actually know how to actually cobble a story together and make it work, and we didn't get that here. Pardon me. So anyway, I could be here all day talking about the writing, because the writing is just that bad. The acting here is just flat. I really can't talk about it much because, well, the acting is barely there. Special effects. Besides our CG flies and our passable gore, we have the shit man. And the shit man costume, about the only way I can sum it up, and it's not going to make a lot of sense, is that the shit man costume looks like shit because it doesn't look like shit. What I mean is if you are going to make a monster in a film who's supposed to be a giant pile of human waste, it would help if it looked like a pile of crap. Instead, it basically looks like a bunch of Play-Doh that got friggin' slapped onto a wire frame. And the costume is horrible because you can clearly see you can clearly see like arm seams, and it looks terrible. It's like, guys, this costume is one of the cheapest costumes I've seen in a horror movie in a long time. Well, I can't even call this thing a horror movie because it was trying to be a horror comedy, except every single attempt at humor failed miserably because these writers have never heard of comedy, and at least that's what I'm going to assume. So yeah, guys, the suit, the thing which is supposed to absolutely sell you on this, looks terrible. It seriously looks less, like a pile of crap, and looks essentially more like a pile of slightly melty chocolate. And yes, there is a big difference there. Pardon me. Also, apparently, when the shit man starts leaving messages as he starts taking victims, he is supposed to be writing messages on the wall in, crap. The problem is that none of it actually is coming up brown. A lot of it is coming up as red, which makes me think that he's either actually writing these messages in blood, or every single person in Butte County has some kind of horrible illness which is leaving them with bloody stool. It's just a wild assumption. Excuse me, and it probably isn't too far off. About the only positive I can grant to this movie is that the sound mix is at least competently done. Where in this case, guys, the sound mix is actually very, very well done. The soundtrack is a little bit lacking, but frankly, I don't care. I do not care about a lack of music. The very fact that the only positive I can cull from this thing is that the audio from the dialogue is mixed well. That is not a good positive. Pardon me. And it certainly is not enough for this goddamn movie to actually stand on its own as a watchable movie. So when all is said and lighting is okay. The camera work, though, the camera used here is an incredibly cheap camera, so everything is really blurry, and I'm talking picture quality, which is probably around the quality of like VHS. So it really, guys, it really isn't even a pretty film to look at. It's where the picture quality is that bad. Now, when all is said and done, though, am I able to recommend this thing? No. Hell no. This movie is absolute trash, and frankly, that's probably exactly where I'm going to put this thing, is in the trash. I have no way of recommending Monsturd to anybody, for any reason. About the only people I could possibly recommend it to is anybody who really believes that toilet humor is the funniest thing on the planet, because this has some of the most juvenile and puerile toilet humor you will ever see on film. And frankly, it just isn't funny. It's really bad toilet humor. And if you really do believe that the toilet humor is the absolute funniest thing you can ever cook up, then go right ahead and check it out. This thing might then be for you. However, if you're someone who doesn't have the mindset of a fucking 10-year-old, you're not going to want to watch this. This thing is terrible. It's horrible. This is the second time I'm going to say it. The movie is a piece of shit. Now, because this is Fan Appreciation Month, Monsturd came off the Amazon wish list. The person who sent it in is Kevin from YouTube. You can find his YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/K. It is KM Brooksbank. Dude, thank you. I was sort of curious if this thing was going to be any good, and even though my hopes were kind of low, it still couldn't even meet those low expectations. But hey, I honestly would not have known if you hadn't sent it in. So, dude, I thank you for that. Once more, guys, that is youtube.com/user/KM Brooksbank. Swing over there. I will have a link to his YouTube channel in this video's description. Swing over there, check him out, and if you like what you see, sub him. As for me, well, this this fucking cough is just starting to bother me. I'm going to go find something better to watch. And after watching 90 minutes of a horrible looking shit monster, I think I'm gonna go watch Dogma and be fucking reminded of what a good shit demon is supposed to look like. So yes, guys, with that we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.